the County Council, but I am not affected to any greater degree than any other person. So I'm declaring an interest, but I'm not going to withdraw from the meeting.
Okay. Item 3, presentation of petition to save the feature of on the floor of Pendle Rise Shopping Centre, to be presented by Mr. Mark Cook.
Forgive me, a few years ago I got diagnosed with autism, so I tried my best to try and explain what it is. In the Arndale Centre, where you go to Mercia, there's a compass at the bottom. What I want to do, I want to save it and put it outside the new complex. For when I was young, I used to run around it, and it's got memories of when I was with my mum, and people, when I was getting the signatures, saying that when they were young, they have memories of it as well. So in future generations, they're going to have their kids running around there, and when they grow up, they're going to think, oh yeah, I remember when I was small, running around that. So I want to save that and put it outside on the floor at the new complex for memories.
Okay. Councillor Witt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I thank Mr. Cook very much for his very timely petition. Maybe I need to declare another registrable interest as a member of the Pembroke Board, but as far as the council is concerned, we will make every effort to relocate the compass, and given the nautical background to Nelson, Admiral Lord Nelson obviously, the compass is a very relevant item and one that we would like to see preserved. We have got tenders in for the demolition of Pendle Rise. They've come in under budget, and I would hope that we'll have change so that if there is any additional expenditure of retaining the compass and reinstating it somewhere different, that we ought to be able to cover that cost. I think it's very commendable for you to raise the petition and save the compass. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lord.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to thank the gentleman for bringing this to us. I think it's really important. I worked in the Arndale in 1972. But it does remind me when we were closing and refiguring the Hartley Hospital in Colne, there was and there still is, a mosaic floor in the entrance, and everybody fought long and hard to save that, and it was saved. It's still there now. So thank you. Thank you for your efforts.
Okay. Fine, thank you. Item 4, minutes of the council.
Can I move those, Mr. Mayor?
Seconder. All those in favour? That's carried. Announcement from the Mayor and the Leader of the Council. I think my announcement has been emailed to the Council. Do you have anything, Councillor Witt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for your documentary evidence that you submitted about what you're up to, and I admire your energy and diligence in carrying out your role. You do mention the official opening of Philtrops, their new factory extension in Barnoldswick, and I was able to join you on that day. We are very proud of the investment that Philtrops have made. They're a Swiss-based company, and what they've done is brought their Swiss production line over to Barnoldswick. I mean, it's a multi-million-pound investment. They're the biggest plant that Philtrops have, but they have production plants in Mexico, in the Czech Republic, and obviously in Barnoldswick. And it's a delight to see the company investing in Barnoldswick, providing local jobs and creating the economic conditions that put Van Olswyk and Pendle firmly on the map of exporting throughout the world. And I think you'll agree, Mr Mayor, that it was a very impressive opening, where there were representatives from 27 countries, and there were many languages being spoken around the room, and they'd flown people in literally from all over the world. So I think that was a great good do. I want to mention two further things. First of all, I have written today to all the parish town councils in Pendle about the localisation of assets, which we discussed as a council in March of this year, and we've been working on identifying the assets that could possibly be transferred to local organisations, parish and town councils, and that begins the process of discussing what can and should be retained locally in the advent of local government reorganisation and the new unitary councils. On that score, my final comment is about LGR, but specifically the role that Lawrence Conway has undertaken in the months that he has been our interim chief executive. It's Lawrence's last meeting as interim chief executive, and I want to thank him very much for the work that he's done, not only on LGR, where he has a considerable degree of expertise, but in his handling of all the day-to-day business carried out by Pendle Council, his diligence in turning up at the Fleet Street depot at 7 o'clock in the morning to brief our workers down there, and he's keeping the staff throughout the organisation informed about what's been going on. I think he's been an invaluable resource, particularly because of LGR experience. But I'd like to thank Lawrence, and I'm sure the council would like to thank Lawrence for his input. And he will be here for a few weeks yet. Well, not many weeks yet. 6 days? Is that all it is? Good grief. We will be welcoming Dean. There will be a handover, but I'm sure the council will join in me in thanking Lawrence, wishing him all for he's probably semi-retirement. I'm not really sure about that. But good luck to you in the future, Lawrence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I know this item is specifically for yourself as the Mayor and the leader to make announcements, but if I could take this opportunity as well to thank Lawrence Conway, the Interim Chief Executive, for everything that he has done here at Pendle Council, especially lifting the staff morale over the last since he has been here. And as David said, his leadership he has shown, the day-to-day running of the council, is very appreciated, especially with his expertise on LGR and the general leadership that he has brought to Pendle Council, and all the very best for the future. Thank you, and it's been great to work with you here.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the comments made by Councillors Whip and Mahmood as well. It's been really fantastic having Mr Conway here at the Council, and as has been mentioned, his expertise on a number of issues, not just LGR, but particularly LGR, has been really invaluable for this borough, and it puts us in a very good position, a negotiating position, and the knowledge and the expertise that's been shared with members since Mr Conway has been here will help us in the future. So much appreciated, and all the best.
Item 6, questions on notice from the public to the leader, if any? No. Item 7, questions on notice by members to the leader, committee chairman, or representative of an outside body on matters not otherwise on the agenda? No. Item 8, report by the leader on the work of the executive. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I refer to the written report. I just wanted to pick a couple of items out. First of all, on the front page there's the revenue outturn report. When we managed from last financial year to bolster the reserves by over £1 million, and I think that's a tremendous achievement that we went from drawing down from balances to a positive position. To a large extent, that was because of the investment income and managing that investment income and maximising the investment income. And I'd like to pay tribute to the council staff who were involved with that and making it happen. I know that there is a very active process in place, and that it's not just money sat in the bank, it is moved about in order to maximise the return on the investment. So thank you very much for that. It does put the council in very good stead for the next few years, when obviously we've got the pressures of local government reorganisation. It allows us not a great deal of flexibility, but it gives us a bit of breathing space in terms of the inevitable pressures that we have on the finances, some of which we'll be referring to tonight. The second thing I want to refer to was actually taken with press and public excluded. So this is the first public surfacing of this, and I'd like to thank Councillor Andy Bell, who's the councillor responsible, but Stephanie, whose name I don't know her last name, but Stephanie, who took a job with the council recently and who negotiated absolutely superb deal with the providers of the website. Thank you very much. Stephanie Deleuze. And Stephanie negotiated this superb deal with Jadu, who provide the website. Not only are we getting a facelift to the website, which will bring us somewhere into the 21st century, but also we're getting it at effectively nil cost. And we've got a 3-year deal that will comfortably get us to local government reorganisation, and I think we'll have a far better means for members of the public to actually go online, find what they need and do what they want. So those are the first 2 items. I would otherwise I'd move that we note the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In July, a budget was allocated for apprentice and training funding. I'd just like to ask the leader if anyone has been appointed in a position yet as an apprentice, with it being the start of the academic year. I presume it would be a good time to recruit someone like that.
Do you want to take any of the questions? No.
Is there any more questions to the leader? No.
Right. In terms of the apprenticeships, that has been agreed, and I understand that we have advertised. Okay, so we've advertised, we've interviewed for one of the posts, and we are due to appoint very shortly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Item 9, report of the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and annual report, which is enclosed. Do you want to add anything else, Councillor Church?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, I submit the reports and will just briefly draw members' attention to the fact that there are references in there to item 11, which we will be discussing shortly, which is the matter of the bulky household waste and replacement waste containers.
Okay. Any questions? No? Item 10, review of the council constitution. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm grateful to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee taking this on. If Howard, do you want to just hold up your copy of the Constitution there? So it's sort of like, well, about an inch thick and got lots of words in it. I don't want the council necessarily to be spending a long time on this, Mr Mayor, but we are asked a significant number of questions. And the Overview and Scrutiny Committee asked for a survey to be carried out about two aspects of council meetings, one of which was do you want meetings to start at 6:30, and the other one was do you want to have the cut-off for debate reduced from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. By the time that we got the report circulated, 18 councillors had responded to that survey, and in both cases there were 15 members in favour of both changes and 3 members against. So I think we appreciate that it doesn't suit everybody, but it does seem that there's a fair majority in favour of both changes in terms of the time of meetings. So in that respect, and perhaps we just need to keep things separate, but in that respect, could I move, Mr Mayor, that we do vary the times of meetings from 7 p.m. to 6:30 and the cut-off for debate. We can suspend standing orders and carry on, but we move that from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. So if I could move that for a start and then come back in, please, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Mahmood, do you want a second now? Councillor Salter.
Do you want that to go to the vote first?
Or do you want to say what you want to say and then...
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a quick question. I'm happy fully to support the recommendation. A quick question regarding 2.3, which is to do with the mandatory training for councillors who make decisions. And this refers mainly to the area committees when you look at the papers. And it says that licensing planning matters. If this paper is recommended and adopted tonight, does that mean it's with immediate effect that training has to take place? Because if I'm on a committee and I haven't done the training, I can't sit on that committee. And I know that area committees are coming up beginning of next month. And we have to then can carry out the planning training prior to any planning matters that come up in the area committee. Can I just clarify that part, please?
Mr Mayor, I think it would benefit us to deal with these issues one by one. My view is that the training would be coming over a period of time. It would not exclude people from participating in development management matters at the meetings that we've got week after next, and that there would be a reasonable period of time for people to get skilled up. On that point, I don't think it's the training or the lack of it that is necessarily the problem. I think that there are other things come into play, and development management where most councillors are experienced. I think there have been some perverse decisions, and I suspect that no amount of training would have resulted in a different decision. So I don't think it's a be-all and end-all. But Ms Mayor, if you can dispose of the start times and the curfew time for a start.
Yeah. We've got a proposal and seconder from Councillor Whip. All those in favour? Against? That's carried.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just I've been. It's been pointed out to me by the Democratic Services Manager that there may be some agendas in the pipeline where we're still going to be under the old hours, if you will. So therefore, the practical solution here would be that that takes effect from executive meeting on the 16th, Thursday, the 16th of October, so that there's to allay confusion in the immediate future on meeting time.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to take that on board. Can I refer to the other recommendations? Recommendation 2.1 is extended definition of the policy framework. Now, I have challenged Howard to actually say, well, what, in exact words does this mean? And I have got not a long list, but a reasonably long list of stuff that I could read out. I do not intend to do so. Sufficient to say, I'm satisfied that Howard has got a list of stuff that is part of the policy framework, written down black and white. We know where we are. So I'm content to propose that we accept that. At 2.2, Mr Mayor, I am content that we end the practice of substitutions at the executive meetings, and I would just check whether people are generally in agreement with that. Councillor Mahmood wants to come in.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Our group's position is that we are against that. I think on the basis that occasionally there might be some emergencies or for medical reasons or holidays, and other personal reasons. I can understand the thinking that a portfolio upholder, that's their kind of again that area of interest, expertise, and they have to report and lead on that. But occasionally, sometimes you do need that representation, substitution to kind of help with matters, to step in. So I would not support that amendment, that motion. So we will be pushing for removal of that.
Do you have a seconder? We don't go to the vote for that. Do you have a councillor seconder? Yeah.
Right, so, Mr Mayor, I'm proposing that we do accept that there should not be executive substitutions. The reasoning for that is that the membership of the executive is to be set by the leader, so it's not legally, it's not within the control of the political groups. And I think in practical terms, it's very hard for a member who hasn't been involved in formulating proposals and discussing with officers to actually sit there and present them. I think it's a case of making sure the numbers are there, and I just think it's legally and practically the sensible thing to do. So I would move and look for a seconder in terms of that limitation.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to second that. I have experience on the council, and in doing so I was the lead member that supported the work of the Cabinet there, and because I was close to that work and understood what was going on, I was able to substitute in that way. I was titled in order to do that. We don't have a system that allows us to do that. Therefore, I think it's sensible that I support this motion.
Okay, we've got proposals, seconder from Councillor Mahmood and Councillor Ali. So we go for that amendment. For all those in favour?
No, she's clear. What she's got passed it. That's a proposal. Not. Is that a proposal? Not.
Yeah.
Proposal to have
That's an amendment. That's an amendment. Yeah. That's an amendment. Yeah. That's an amendment. Not to accept that there be no substitute.
Yeah.
Are we clear? Yeah. So put that amendment.
Mr Mayor, I'm not clear. I mean, I think there was a double negative employed there. So, if it's a double negative, it's very difficult. As I understand it, my proposal was the first, and the Councillor Mahmood's proposal, which was to allow substitute members, was put on as an amendment, and then would be the first thing to be voted on.
So that was we voting on, to allow substitution. All those in favour?
Okay.
Against? That's lost. So we go with the original.
Sorry, what was the numbers, Mr.
It was 11-10. 10 for 11 against. I will go with the original proposal. All those in favour? Against?
No.
That's carried.
Mr Mayor, Mr Culshaw is saying, well, we didn't vote on the definition of the policy framework, but I was hoping to wrap them all up as one rather than take them individually. So if we can take that one as proposed, I'll carry on down the list, and it's only if there's an objection in the room that we'll take a separate vote, yeah? So we've agreed, well, I've proposed that we extend the definition of the policy framework. The next one is the mandatory training, which will come into effect over a period of time. 2.5 is amend the rules relating to the process for developing the budget and policy framework. Again, I've looked in detail at this with Howard's proposal, and I am content for that to be the case. We're noting the amendments to the financial procedure rules. We're delegating authority to the Assistant Director of Planning to make confirm tree preservation orders. And I thought there was something else, but maybe I'm missing it. 2.6, and this is clarify that the chairman retains the discretion to determine whether and at what point non-executive councillors may be permitted to address the executive. Now, Mr Mayor, on that one, I'm prepared to accept the suggestion from overview and scrutiny that the chairman doesn't have an absolute right to prevent non-executive members speaking. But I think there are times when it is sensible to sort of limit the debate because it might become repetitive. And the example was a recent executive where we were talking about something that was a recommendation to the council tonight. And after we'd been discussing it for probably about 50 minutes, I said, well, look, we're going to be discussing this at the council meeting, let's leave it at that for now. And so I think there are occasions when it may be sensible, but I would be the last person to try and prevent people contributing. So my suggestion on that is that the chairman of the executive does have the discretion to limit debate, but that discretion is not employed unreasonably. In other words, you couldn't have a dictator say, no, we're not having you speaking. But if there is a sensible reason as to why the debate should be limited, then that should be the case. Now, I'm sorry, Mr Culshaw, that I was insisting on chapter and verse and precisely what it was. So I'm sorry to leave it so woolly, but my proposal is that the chair does have the discretion, but that hasn't got to be used unreasonably. Is that Can you work with that?
It's the will of the council.
If that's the will of the council. So I would propose that, and I think that wraps everything up, where if there's any division on some things, at least all the rest of it's in the substantive resolution. Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed?
Yeah, I was going to speak on 2.6, but
Do you have a seconder for Councillor Whip's proposal? And Councillor Ball?
thank you, Mr Mayor. In terms of 2.6, I think I'm reassured by what the leader has mentioned in terms of being allowed to speak at the executive meeting. Because 2.6, from my reading of it, or my interpretation, is kind of contradicting what 3.6 was saying. Because to read 3.6 on page 2, that was kind of saying it's up to the discretion of the leader, which it is, up to the chairman. But just in terms of what Councillor Whip has mentioned, which reassures me, but that's not what it says in here in terms of, obviously, we've got to allow people to have a debate and speak, and I totally agree, sometimes things are repetitive at meetings and it's not really assisting with the debate and the decision-making process. So I agree with that. But can we have that reassurance that that is worded within the Constitution?
Councillor Yaffe, well.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just looking at 2.6 and what Councillor Whip has suggested, the word reasonable. Who determines that? Because you're self-policing with respect, Chair, because how do you determine a councillor? So you might think Councillor Suckley, for example, before he speaks, you think, well, he's not going to make a reasonable contribution. I'm picking at him, I'm not saying that. That might be what Councillor Whip thinks. I mean, I don't think that. I think Councillor Suckley makes reasonable points. Not all the time, sometimes. So it needs clarity, because I might come to a meeting, Chair, and me and you might fall out, Mr. Leader, one day, and then you might think, actually, I'm not going to listen to this, Mr. Councillor Iqbal. So is it self-policing? Chairman asked that question, rhetorically. I think it might be.
Councillor Ruby Anwar?
I think the key thing here is that people feel that they are allowed to speak and can be listened to. And I think the point is that if someone wants to speak, you invite them to speak. But if what they're saying has been repeated, then you say, please sit back down.
Councillor Mahmood?
In a nice way. Sit down. I've already said that, now sit down.
Just a quick comment, Mr Mayor. I think it's always been the good policy of this council that any member can attend any meeting of the council and speak on any matter that's on the agenda, and I think that's, it's good practice, it's role-playing, it's democracy, and we should respect that. But I do understand the audience where you're coming from, so I think people who are also in attendance, they should be a bit more reasonable as well.
We've got a proposal, a seconder. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Good. Item 11, overview and scrutiny committee recommendations for consideration, review of bulky household waste collection and replacement waste containers.
Mr Mayor, can I move the recommendations of the executive, which are set out on the pink sheets? So it's agree option 2 with regard to bulky household waste collection, by which residents can receive 8 free bulky household waste collections per year, with a maximum of 9 items per collection. And in respect of the waste containers, to agree option 3, which it's a bit gobbledygook on the pink sheets, but essentially it's to receive a maximum of 3 waste container replacements per year for free, to allow one bin per scheme, in other words, grey bin, blue bin, brown bin, to be replaced, excluding the green bins, which are a subscription scheme. So what I am moving is paragraph 1 without the words in italics, and paragraph 2, which is option 3 regarding the waste collection. So those are the recommendations from the executive. Mr. Mayor, in this respect, we have championed the ability for residents in Pendle to have bulky household waste collected free of charge. I think the majority of the council are proud that we do that. We believe that it does lead to cleaner streets and that it does reduce fly tipping, which both bear costs for the council if we have to clean stuff up. Clearly, it won't stop unscrupulous waste collectors from abrogating residents' duty of care, taking waste away and then dumping it indiscriminately. But I think the ability for residents to have the bulk household waste collected reduces those fly-by-night collectors to a significant degree. And then in terms of the bins and the proposals to charge for replacement bins, I think there are circumstances across the borough where we see bins being stolen. So somebody's bin disappears, they take somebody else's bin, and it cascades like that. Secondly, we see far too many occasions where bins are broken, and the blue bins are notorious for this, with lids getting broken and the body of the bins themselves falling apart as well. So it would be entirely unreasonable to charge somebody in those circumstances. And thirdly, and I don't really want to advertise this very much, but we have had instances where bins have been used in arson, so they set alight, and we had a spate of that over in West Craven a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, and we've had more recent instances in Nelson. So in none of those circumstances would it be reasonable for the council to be charging for replacements. Excuse me. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm moving the recommendation of the executive, which is to leave both services without charges, but to bring in constraints which prevents abuse of the system and uncontrolled expenditure. And I move.
Ali?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst the executive was unanimous in supporting the two recommendations as set out,
I think, Ali, do you have a second for Councillor Whip's proposal?
I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I say, whilst the executive was unanimous in its recommendations as set out, I think I wouldn't be doing my job properly as portfolio holder, and I'm also conscious that the officer who leads this particular department affected by these recommendations is here tonight. I wouldn't be doing my job properly if we didn't address the matters set out in the italics and brackets. And this issue was raised at the executive in terms of what will happen to requests for bulky household wastes after the 8 free collections are exhausted by householders. And ultimately, the issue that I envisage, and I'm sure colleagues may also envisage, is a return to the status quo after those 8 free requests are exhausted. Because ultimately, if we don't empower and equip the department and the officers in question to have powers to do what, essentially? Do they charges are out to them. And also, what do? Do they turn down requests point blank? And if so, will that not ultimately lead back to the status quo potentially, and unfortunately lead to fly tipping and again an exhaustion of the resources of this council, which is the very reason why, ironically, we passed the recommendations that we've set out. So I think it's important for us all to consider that, and I'll pose the question, for colleagues to maybe enlighten us on how we can tackle that. What powers are we going to equip our officers to be able to not return to the status quo, to tackle the massive exhaustion of resources that this particular problem has across the borough?
David, you want to say anything?
No.
No?
Not if you can.
Okay. We've got a proposal, Councillor Suckley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been quite vocal about my objection to these free charges. Free charges doesn't oxymoron, isn't it? We have one of the worst fly tipping instances in the country, and yet our bulky waste collections are free, and we are one of the few authorities that offer a free bulky waste collection. So those two things don't go hand in hand at all. You would expect that the place that had the highest fly tipping will be the place that charged the most, but yet it's the opposite way around. So it's completely counterintuitive. Why on earth are people still tipping? Now, for me, the people that are responsible will happily pay. They are responsible, they book those things out, and they would happily pay. If you went out to a private operator to have a bulky waste collection, it would cost you way in excess of £13.50 for 4 items. It would cost you a lot more than that. So it's a cheap service. Now, we've sat in this room before and we've discussed about how we can contribute to that cost as well for people who are on lower incomes. And we talked about a 50% subsidy and talked about it being at £6.75, even cheaper. Now, if people have got bulky waste items to get rid of, that implies that they're buying them as well. So if they can't afford to pay the £6.75, there's something seriously wrong. In terms of the waste, waste containers at a charge of £25, I think, again, that is incredibly reasonable. That doesn't even cover the cost of the container, it's purely the administration and delivery. Now, as we all do, travelling around Pendle, you see our bins left in the street, kicked over, knocked over, on allotments, on the back of flatbed trucks where they're driven around with brushes and rakes and all sorts of things. If it's going to cost £25, they're going to use... if it's free to have a replacement, people are going to use them. They're going to abuse that system. If there's a charge, they'll think twice. They'll go out and they'll buy their own container. So I'm sorry, I cannot support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Whip, you want to reply? Councillor Iqbal.
Mr Mayor, I know what Councillor Whip was the leader moved from the executive. But Councillor Ali's posed the question that what happens if we do 8 free collection, what happens on item collection 9? If we're not going to collect it, then the risk is that we're going to be serving section 215 notices here and there, which are both costly and take a longer time to implement. So I'd like to move an amendment that we have the 8 free collection, which ultimately can be 72 items, and I can't think of any constituent of mine who has 72 items to collect in a year from the council free of charge, and that service is still there. But I think after the 8 free collections per year, there should be a steep charge as set out in option 1, which is the 1 to 4 is £13.50, and thereafter with a 50% discount to community to council tax support. So I'll move that as an amendment.
Do you have a second, Councillor Iqbal?
I'll second it.
Okay. Do you want to reply to...
If there are no other speakers, Mr Mayor. First of all, can I address Councillor Sutcliffe's comment? He said, well, we're the worst flight in the country, which I very much dispute. I very much dispute that. I think it reflects the efficiency and effectiveness of our officers that they actually identify a lot of the rubbish as fly tipping, but included within those figures are side waste. So somebody puts the bin out and they've got a bag alongside it, that can get included in the figures. So I do not accept that our position with fly tipping is worse than elsewhere in the country. I think what is happening is that we've got a good team of officers who are actually tackling these issues. And I would highlight an initiative that we had in Nelson very recently, where we identified quite a number of rubbish-filled backyards, where bins had been left out and where things had been left in the back streets. And effective action is being taken in all of those cases. So it's the proactive approach that is actually forcing up the figures, and then you say, well, we're the worst in the country. Because we're taking action, the figures are appearing in the first place. If nobody was doing aught about it and was just ignoring it, the figures wouldn't be there. But I very strongly disagree with any charges in this respect. I think in terms of the bins issue, which isn't challenged in the amendment, that any bins that are stolen, burnt or broken, it's entirely unreasonable to make charges. I know the Conservatives want to do this. I fundamentally disagree with them. I'm disappointed with the amendment that's coming from the independent group. I think it's misguided. Quite frankly, if people are generating more than 72 items a year, I don't think that that's household waste. I think it's more likely to be commercial waste. It could be a landlord that is wanting to get rid of furnishings on the cheap. I think that they should be paying commercial rates, higher a skip, higher a skip from our environmental services people. But we should not be using the system to allow commercial operators to do things on the cheap. So I urge the Council to oppose the amendment. Let's leave it free of charge. Let's leave our residents with one of the best services in the country, and let's not seek to capitalise on people's misery by including charges. Clearly, if the amendment is passed, we'll live with it, but I urge the Council not to support this. Do not breach the principle of not introducing charges. Once you've got a chink in the armour, you know, the wedge gets driven in ever further. Avoid doing that.
Thank you. We'll go to the vote on the amendment, yes. All those in favour?
Four. 15.
Against?
6. 15, 7.
That's carried.
That becomes a substantive
motion. We'll go for the vote.
Yeah.
On the substantive motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 12, overview and scrutiny committee recommendations to full council equality and diversity policy report.
Mr. Mayor, this has got my name on it, but I have to say that there wasn't any discussion, consultation with myself in terms of drawing this up. Having been referred to the Constitution only today, I looked at what it actually says, and it says that the policy development comes through the executive. Now, I'm a bit, you know, aghast that my name's on something that I haven't had any involvement in developing. So I would suggest that officers do look at the Constitution and follow it, rather than bringing things through alternative routes and then presenting at council. Having said that, I think that this policy is commendable and it ought to be adopted by the council tonight. I think that there may be an interaction with one of the motions that we've got later on, but I think we can live with that balance, if you will. So I would move that we do adopt the policy as set out. I move.
Have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Bell. Any more speakers? All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 13, overview of Security Committee recommendation to full council street naming and numbering policy. Councillor Whip.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, this is something so close to my heart. I could wax lyrical about the street naming policies. I actually think it's a very important issue in terms of the heritage of our area and celebrating both the history, perhaps the geography, and the people who have made our towns and villages the very interesting places that they are. In terms of this policy, I think there are a couple of areas that we need to finesse it. And the first issue, Mr. Mayor, is in terms of, well, if I refer people to paragraph 3.13, it says that names of deceased people will only be considered in exceptional circumstances. The council will only name a property or street if the person has been deceased for more than 20 years. Now, I recall two streets that have been named after people in the very recent past. The most recent one was, well, it's a development that's in progress, and it's named after Jordan Bancroft. And Jordan died in Afghanistan, where he was defending people in the area. Sadly, he lost his life, and we want to commemorate Jordan's memory, and indeed we are doing so, with a new development in Erie. The only other one that I know of recently is Scotland Close in Balmoswick, where Ian Scotland, who was a much respected member of the community and involved with a lot of community activities, particularly sports, we named Scotland Close after Ian Scotland. And I think he'd only passed away a year of that sort of time scale. So I think it's wrong to say that you've got to be dead 20 years before your name could come up. There's another section in this that refers to, you can't name them after living people. And way back in the 1980s, I recall when I was chairman of the Housing Council at the time, that we had a new development in a clearance area in Nelson, and at the time it was the Falklands War, and people said, oh, you know, like we want to call it after battles in the Falklands. And we also had Lloyd Carradine, who had served Nelson Council and Pendle Council for many years as the treasurer. And I managed to get through that we called the development Lloyd Close and Carradine's Close. Now, he was alive and kicking. He was a pacifist, and he was appalled at the prospect of being named with a Falklands battle, but we avoided that. So I think that there are occasions, there will be occasions, and I'm not suggesting to Lawrence that we're going to call anything after him, but you know, he hasn't been here for time immemorial, so you know, you don't get that. But I think there will be occasions when those factors will kick in. So I would like to propose that the policy is adopted, but that we rewrite 3.13 in order to allow people who have recently died to have places named after them. And then 3.21, it's talking about the initial assessment. Now, we have a tradition in Pendle that the naming of streets is the purview of ward councillors, and nowhere in here does it talk about consulted with ward councillors. So I think 3.21, as part of the initial assessment, should include the reference to the ward councillors and inviting them to put forward their proposals and their ideas. And I know in West Craven we do a lot in terms of researching the history and geography, and sometimes the people, in order to come to the right names for the development. So with those amendments, I would move the policy as set out.
Do you want to second it? Do you want to second it?
I do, thank you, Mr Mayor. I fully agree, actually, with everything that Councillor Whip said. That's unusual, isn't it? I think they're all sensible suggestions. I think, did we not recently name something after Nicola Nuttall as well?
Laura Nuttall.
And I think that was quite a poignant and important thing that we did there. So I think that the three that you mentioned there are all important people that we've named streets after. My big thing is that streets should be named after the character of the area and help to form the character of the area. They should reflect what's going on, whether that's the people, the place, the geography, the nature. It's really important that we do that. And I've recently been in consultation with a developer in my ward about what the name of that development should be. And if it was up to most of the developers in this country, they'd all be named after something incredibly bland. Everything would be called Deerwood something or other, or View of a Flower. It's just it just needs to reflect the area much more strongly than the developers would like it to do so. We're not here to run their marketing department. We're here to represent our area. And so yes, I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Zafar Ali.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As joint portfolio holder for this particular street with Councillor Hanif, I've had a detailed briefing from Sarah Whitwell, in fact, this afternoon. So I think a policy like this is essential at this time. And it also deals with sometimes the egg-in-your-face sort of scenarios where there's certain names being proposed for buildings, which we may not necessarily agree with. And whilst we don't have a policy, it's difficult to obviously oppose such proposals. So I think it's really important that we do adopt the policy, and I'm happy to support the leader with his recommendations as set out. I think it's also important to note that the fees for the naming of new roads and streets will, in newly developed areas will be paid for by developers themselves, and those fees are designed to cover the administrative costs of that this council faces in dealing with the consultations and the various different phases of adopting those new street names. So I'm happy to also support the policy and its adoption.
Thank you. We've got proposal seconder. All those in favour? Again? That's carried. Item 14. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, can I first of all just mention, obviously, the issue of taxi licensing and safety has been around this council for a number of years, and we've had some very heated debates as groups. But I want to place on record my appreciation as chair of the working group, both to Councillor Kevin Salter and Councillor Mick Stickland, who aren't here tonight, and also to the taxi trade. I think we had two very productive meetings, which were very amicable, and we came to a view within 2 meetings for something that would have taken years, I think, had we not sat around the same table. The officers have played a key role, but Mr Mayor, there are various recommendations, and I'll just go through them. There is one change on one of the recommendations, because the working group made a different decision, and officers have recently clarified that position as well. So in terms of A, recommendation A, the vehicle age limits, that's as is set out. The recommendation B, the testing of frequency, that is to be amended to an annual MOT will be required for all vehicles which can be issued from any garage, and for all vehicles over 6 years, a further 6-month MOT will be required which can be issued from any garage. I know I contacted Councillor Salter earlier today and said it was 3 years, but I've checked with the committee clerk, and if you remember we had a debate whether it was 8 years, and officers came up with 6 years. C is as set out. D is also set out, and this is something that came from the trade, Mr Mayor, that if, for example, vehicles fail spot check or the MOT, that for the first offence that particular vehicle is off the road and the driver is suspended for 2 weeks, for a second offence for 4 weeks, and for the third offence before the taxi licensing committee. And I think the position was made quite clear by the working group colleagues that were there, that the taxi licensing committee will not look too impressively if somebody appears before us for something like that. In terms of the daily vehicle checks, I know that was a heated discussion previously by both councillors in this room and outside. So we've now given the option to the trade in agreement that those who want to do the app can do the app, those who want to do a paper check can do the paper check, and that will be implemented by our officers. And then the knowledge test, obviously the world has moved on since the original knowledge test was put in place, because most drivers now work off sat-nav and PDAs or whatever they call them. And you don't need to have that local knowledge test, so that will be removed from the test elements. So I'm moving those recommendations set out.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm quite happy to second the motion. I would like to put on record that I was on the committee for 3 years. This final year, through the work with the trade and with suggestions from the trade, has been very, very productive. And they've put in place lots of measures that we've gone over and agreed, but the majority of the recommendations have come from the trade. We've adjusted and slightly amended, but it was great to work with the trade. They worked very well with us. We had good discussions, and very quickly we came to this proposal that we're putting forward, so I strongly recommend it.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As a member of the Taxi Licensing Committee, I think that Benham Council should thank Jackie, the Taxi Licensing Officer, for outstanding years of service, and also that as members of the committee, I think that we should say a big thank you to her for all that she's done for us. Thank you.
You've got a proposal of seconder? No, Councillor
Just a point, when I saw this on the agenda and I was thinking, oh no, here we go again. Taxi issue, we have a heated debate, but I think for the first time in many, many years, I think we're all on the same page. So I think I'm really delighted that everyone's working together and the council are happy, or most of us are anyway, and the taxi trade are happy. So, yeah, glad to support it.
Councillor Whip.
I'd be delighted if everybody was happy, Mr Mayor, but I suspect that there's somebody that won't be. But I am delighted that we have finally got acceptance for recording of the daily checks. If we go back to last December, I think it was, clearly the council was very much at odds. There were divided votes on that. And it could have happened quicker, but we got there in the end. And I think that in terms of whether people are going to carry reams of paper around with them to prove that they've done the checks or they just use the phone, I think the inevitability is that the convenience of using the app on the phone will win the day. I just want to seek some clarification from Councillor Iqbal, because I'm not sure. I think he was amplifying the wording that we're agreeing tonight. Is that the case in terms of the test and the regime? And yeah, so I would be just grateful, Mr Mayor, that can be spelt out so that we're all clear what we're voting on. But delighted that at long last we have got the basis for a safer taxi regime, a regulated taxi regime, and one where we can all be comfortable that we are doing our utmost, both between the council and the taxi trade, to ensure that the taxis are as safe as possible.
Councillor Connor.
Thank you. I'm happy that we've all got on the same page with the safety aspect. But the colleague, Councillor Whitehall, on the tests, I think local taxi drivers should know local things and local areas and where places are. So I don't agree with you on that the test should be taken out or possibly. I do think drivers should know where certain places are. Okay.
Councillor Lord.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm a little bit, not alarmed, but, well, yeah, probably am. The knowledge test doesn't always work. I use taxis 2 or 3 times a week, if not more, and more taxi drivers don't know where they're going. Whether they're using the sat-nav, and they nearly all happen. When I get to near my destination, home, and where we're going now? I said, oh, down there. Where are you from?
Councillors.
Burnley. They're nearly all from Burnley, these drivers, and they don't know where they're going. So the knowledge test, I'm a little bit alarmed that we're going to take that out. But that's just my opinion.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy that the progress is going ahead. Now, the only concern that I have is looking at section E413. The driver will be suspended as set for about 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Well, if it's like Councillor Lord just said then, if we've got somebody who's registered here that lives in Burnley, how do we enforce it if they're then operating outside this area? That's just something I'd like just to be clarified with, if you like. It's just something that we know that is to be enforced, and they're not just going to go to outside area for Pendle and carry on trading.
Councillor Iqbal.
If there's no more speakers, I'll wrap up.
No more speakers.
So just to help Councillor Bell, if any driver is licensed within Pendle, whether it's from Burnley, Pendle, Timbuktu, wherever, if they fall foul of this, they are suspended. It doesn't matter where they live. If they're licensed with us, they're a licensed driver, they're affected by that rule. In terms of the knowledge test, that was a suggestion that came both from our officers and the trade, because I'm surprised if somebody's using the sat-nav that they don't know where they're going. Maybe Councillor Lord has that experience, maybe she can share it with Jackie or Neil, and we can speak to that particular driver. But the main points of the knowledge test will remain, so the highway code issue, the language issue will remain. The only one that's coming out is the local knowledge test, because it was set up 20 years ago when most of us didn't use sat-nav, Chairman. But I'm grateful for people's comments.
Councillor, can you please clarify the amendment?
Yeah, so 4.1 now reads, an annual MOT will be required for all vehicles which can be issued from any garage, and for all vehicles over 6 years, a further 6 months MOT will be required, which can be issued from any garage.
Okay. Anything else? All those, now we go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Now, okay, item 15, notice of motion. I just want to say before we go to the notice of motion, and we, all the council, if we repeating anything, we can just stop there because we don't want any repetition. Okay? So, bin collections, Councillor Whip.
Back to the bins, I don't know whether this is repetitive or not. There's another Radio 4 programme which is just a minute, so you could invoke that one as well, you know. But in terms of bin collections, Mr Mayor, the resolution reads that Council notes that the County Council is asking for changes to household bin collection frequencies in Pendle and other districts, together with the introduction of food waste collections next year. Council also notes that LCC is pressing ahead with waste transfer arrangements which will add an estimated minimum of £560,000 to Pendle Council's costs. And that in view of pending local government reorganisation, Council believes that this is the wrong time to be making significant changes in waste collection and transfer arrangements. Therefore, Council resolves to reiterate its request for the County Council to review the decision to put waste transfer costs onto the Borough Council, and that any discussion of bin collection changes cease pending the outcome of local government reorganisation. Mr Mayor, the County Council is unashamedly shunting costs onto Pendle and other authorities because of the waste transfer arrangements. The £560,000 is the cost, estimated cost, of continuing to tip off the bin wagons at the Regent Street transfer station. We've got an adequate transfer station in Pendle, works well, conveniently located, and Lancashire County Council is saying, well, you'll have to pay the costs of transferring the bulked up waste down the road to the County Council's disposal facilities. That, Mr Mayor, is where that £560,000 cost comes off the County Council budget and it goes on to Pendle Council's budget. Now that is a significant and severe imposition on people in Pendle, and it's one that we should not be tolerating. We've asked for a meeting with the leader of the County Council, Mr Conway himself. We haven't had a positive response to that. We've made representations repeatedly on this issue without any success, and it's something that we will pursue to the nth degree, because it is utterly wrong for those costs to be shunted onto Borough Council taxpayers. So far as the frequency of bin collections is concerned, I'm moving to 3 weekly collections may be a logical thing to do in the light of the impending food waste collections. There was actually an article in the Which Consumer magazine from somebody, I think in Somerset, who said that they were anticipating it to be chaos, but actually by recycling fully that they managed and it was okay. However, we've got local government reorganisation coming along, and frankly, I mean, that's diverting a lot of attention, energy and effort from the day-to-day business of running Pendle Council and providing service to our residents. Doing significant service change at the same time as LGR is happening is just completely and utterly the wrong time. I note that Lancaster, the City Council of Lancaster, is moving to 3 weekly collections, and that's coming in very soon. And I know that other councils are doing that. But for the County Council to come along and give us a double whammy by saying, well, we want you to move to 3 weekly collections, and at the same time shunting over £500,000 of costs onto us, is just absolutely and entirely unreasonable, and something that we should, as a council, continue to resist. So I move this resolution, and I'm disappointed that the member who's also a member of the administration at County Hall isn't in the chamber this evening, because she might be able to tell us what they're up to. But those local members ought to be fighting the cause for people here in Pendle and not representing reform-led Lancashire County Council to us and the residents.
Councillor Church. Secondly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second that, but there is not a single word I can think of without repetition, so I'll shut
Thank you. Good choice. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I support the motion. I think Lancashire County Council is, the reform run Lancashire County Council is cost shunting onto Pendle Borough Council. And and I think a couple of, about 10, 12 years ago, they did a similar thing where they did cost shunting of over £800,000, and it was a local taxpayer in Pendle that had to pick up the tab. I think we're in a similar situation. We should be pushing back and saying to Lancashire County Council to contribute and continue to contribute and provide the facilities and the costs and waste collection and bin collections.
Thank you. Can we go to the vote? All those in favour? Oh. Any more speakers?
No, thank you. Next motion.
Smooth progress.
I'm torn on this motion because whilst I completely understand the imposition of that, to use Councillor Whip's term, cost shunting, I actually fully support the weekly food waste collections, and it's my understanding that that's a government mandated thing. So we are not the only ones in the country to be doing this. So I think that to tie the two things together in one motion feels clunky and awkward, because I would happily support the bit about the money, not necessarily the bit about the change in food waste collections and our overall bin collection scheme, because I think that actually that really does need some overhauling, and we need to think really carefully about how we handle our waste in this country generally. So I think that the government are doing the right thing in terms of food waste collections, but it's a localised issue on the finances.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also agree with the food waste collections in principle, and I think that it is something that needs to be done for the preserving, a more sustainable way forward in the way that we handle our waste. However, this motion only points out that the two are happening at the same time, and the financial position that puts this council in. The motion is not opposed to those food waste collections taking place. So, I agree with your point of view. However, this motion does not call for any changes to the plan things happening around those food waste collections, just LCC's headstrong approach to continuing with the waste transfer changes at the same time.
Go to the vote.
Can I just respond briefly?
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, not to repeat what Councillor Lolowip has said, but it is right in exactly what is being said. We're not being critical of food waste collections. The resolution is neutral in respect of that. It's just that the County Council are saying move to 3 weekly residual waste collections at the same time, and that it's the moving to 3 weekly residual collections that we are unhappy with because of the reasons set out. I was going to say something else, Mr. Mayor, but I might be accused of repetition, so I'll sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Next motion, fracking, fossil fuels and climate emergency. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like it to be known that the Council should note that from recent statements from political party leaders that they are on about reinstating fracking and the extraction of fossil fuels from the North Sea. This council should believe that the immediate and long-term consequences of fracking are extremely polluting, and that the commitment to extract every drop of fossil fuel would contribute to catastrophic consequences for our climate. This council should also reaffirm its previous resolutions on fracking and the climate emergency and call upon the government to accelerate investment in renewable energy generation. If we go back to a few years ago when Blackpool started doing the test drills, the Blackpool was being affected by numerous aftershocks. We don't want that situation to be carried on. And if our leaders, or various party leaders, are saying, let's drill, let's get all this, we're heading for disaster. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lord.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any more speakers? Councillor Witt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me start by saying that I fully support this motion. However, I do have an amendment to it. And that is that if we do not cease any new licensing for extracting fossil fuels in the UK, there is irreparable harm to this planet that we all live on for every future generation to come. Every single one. And I think it is so disregarding of anyone's futures to say that new licences should be granted. And so, Mr. Mayor, I would add, I move my amendment that to the bottom of this motion, that we call on the government to issue no new licences for the extraction of fossil fuels in the UK, and that the government should develop policies for an equitable transition for all those people who work in those sectors currently for when the current licences expire, Mr. Mayor. I believe that that is the only way that we will stave off the worst harm of climate change on our planet. And that to do anything less is, it amounts to murder, Mr. Mayor, in my opinion. We are going to cause, if we continue to extract fossil fuels, water shortages across the planet from the changing climate. We're going to cause excess deaths every year, and ultimately, if things get as bad as scientists are saying we absolutely will be on the current track, there will be worldwide war, worldwide poverty, worldwide suffering, that on a scale that we just cannot imagine, Mr. Mayor. So I move that amendment.
Councillor Bell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll happily accept this amendment to this proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was quite prepared to support this until Councillor Lola-Whip spoke, actually. I thought that it was quite sensible. The only bit that really concerned me was calls upon the government to accelerate investment in renewable energy. I don't think the government need any encouragement in what they're doing. You've seen Ed Miliband, trailing up and down the country with his guitar, singing about investment in renewable energies. I think that what they're doing is getting the balance wrong, and to actually cease new licences would cause more damage than it would to kind of keep the country moving. I think that we have to get the balance right. I'm fully in favour of renewable energies, but I also believe in keeping a good, strong economy and keeping the production of our country and the growth of our country going. And I think that the two have to be hand in hand to make sure that we actually have a functioning country. To throw more weight behind renewables at this point when we're really struggling is nonsensical for me. So I think that we need to have a pragmatic and balanced approach to this. And so I was prepared to support the original motion, but to go further, I'm sorry, I can't support that.
Shall we go to the vote? Any more speakers?
Well, Mr. Mayor, can I just seek clarification on the full wording of the additional phrase at the end?
Good try.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would add an additional paragraph after the one beginning council reaffirms that the council writes to government to request that no new licences for the extraction of fossil fuels are granted for anywhere within the UK territories, and that policies for an equitable transition for the people who work in those sectors are developed ahead of time for when those licences expire.
Policies for
Okay, Councillor Mahmood, you want to say anything? No?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm just going to support the motion. I think we discussed this previously. With the fact the environmental impacts. So happy to support the motion.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. The next motion is to discharge. I don't think Councillor Strickland and Councillor Hartley not here.
Mr. Mayor, if I may move the proposal on their behalf. The motion as written is that Council notes with great concern the spilling of untreated raw sewage into Stock Beck and the River Ribble from Bonalt's main sewer in recent weeks, but notes that storm overflows regularly see untreated sewage discharged into local watercourses throughout Pendle, and that across England a total of 3.6 million. Sorry.
Can I just seek a point of clarification? I don't mean to be quite so awkward, but for my own clarification on this, can a motion be moved by another person when neither of the proposer and seconder are in the room according to the Constitution? Okay,
yes,
that's fine. I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, that across England, a total of 3.6 million hours of sewage discharging took place into natural areas last year, the highest number on record at over 8,000 hours more than the previous year. Council believes that the sewage crisis continues to be a national scandal. Successive Conservative and Labour governments have failed to take any meaningful action to stop it and have allowed it to get worse. Council believes it's unacceptable that water companies continue to pay their excessive millions of pounds in pay and bonuses, and the residents should not bear the cost of water companies reducing sewage discharges through increased water bills. Council notes the government's commitment to replace the regulator Ofwat, and Council resolves to instruct the Chief Executive to the right to the Secretary of State, demanding that all water company executive bonuses are paused, to demand that new regulatory regime set binding targets and revoke licences if pollution continues, and invite the Chief Executive of United Utilities and Yorkshire Water to meet with councillors to establish urgent commitments and timescales to improve their infrastructure and reduce sewage discharges in Pendle, and that the Chief Executive right to Ribble Rivers Trust River Action to demonstrate the Council's commitment and support to work with partners to improve water quality in the Ribble and Ayr catchments. Mr. Mayor, it was tragic to see thousands of cubic metres of sewage spilling into the River Ribble during the recent collapse of the sewer in Bonalswick. And when I talk about thousands of cubic metres, it really was. And I was there. I actually reported to the Environment Agency. It was on the Wednesday when the sewage discharge had begun on the Saturday. United Utilities had not reported the fact that there was a discharge into the watercourse for that period of time, several days. So that is a particularly acute example, but it's almost every time there is heavy rainfall that sewage is being discharged into watercourses in West Craven, in Colne and below Nelson, because the sewers are just not designed in a way that prevents that from happening. And it's a matter of course that those discharges are happening. It is time that things changed. The government's move to a new regulator is to be welcomed, but they really must have the teeth and they must have the determination to tackle this problem, to deal with this problem and clean up the Water Companies Act. It is not acceptable to spray raw sewage like it's clean rainfall all over our areas. I know.
You have a seconder?
Councillor Lawler-Whip.
Councillor Lawler-Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad that this motion has come to council now, because if it came to the previous council meeting, I would have to declare a prejudicial interest in this. And in the interest of transparency, I would just like to say that for the past year, I have been working for a major contractor in the water industry who has been delivering projects for Yorkshire Water and other major water companies throughout the UK. In tackling some of these issues, the particular project that I was working on was for Yorkshire Water, and that was a major integrated constructive wetlands, which now successfully built. We started work when I started working there, and the project was finished when I left, thankfully. So I got to see that project from start to finish. It's gone from massive fines being threatened because of the discharges into the River Dern to now a wetland scheme that takes all of the storm overflows and through a completely natural process filters out that and then discharges it into the river at safe levels for the environment. So that's something I'm very, very proud to have worked on. To be a Lib Dem, obviously it's a major campaign issue for us, discharging into rivers, and then for my university placement to actually see a scheme like that develop to completion. Mr. Mayor, as part of that, obviously I was very involved with people from a major water company, not an executive, but people who are, it's their job to try and solve these kinds of issues, and they do have several major regulatory hurdles to get over to actually, tackle this issue at any reasonable rate. And one of those is the Environment Agency is very, very sort of lead-footed about issuing discharge licences to any sort of wetland schemes for these water companies. And so, I would like to just propose a friendly amendment as seconding this, that after the first paragraph of the council resolves, an additional line, that the Secretary of State is asked for Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs, instructs the Environment Agency to review its discharge licensing for integrated constructed wetlands. And that would allow more projects like the one I was working on to happen. And it's, instead of building massive concrete rings and a massive process that uses a lot of chemicals, very active, very costly, it allows natural processes to do those kinds of things. It offers more habitat. Wetlands are they're threatened with extinction. The whole habitat, never mind the creatures and critters that rely on those environments to live. So it has a whole host of benefits, but the EA is just so slow to change its policies that they are hindered in that way. So in the interest of just being fair, I would propose that those sort of policy changes are included in this motion tonight. And I second. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'm more than happy to accept that. I mean, we've got an expert in our midst, but I would again ask if you could just repeat that so that people can get it down.
So the first paragraph, or the first bullet point after council resolves to, after if pollution continues, to say that, and also instructs the Environment Agency.
No, instructs the Chief Executive.
Sorry, no, so we're already instructing the Chief Executive. It's a continuation of The Chief Executive asking the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. So we are asking that Secretary of State to instruct the Environment Agency to review its policies around discharge permissions around integrated constructed wetlands. Is that clear for everyone?
It's more.
Councillor Conway?
No, it's okay.
Councillor Mahmood?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to support the motion as set out and the additional comments that have been made by Councillor Whip. And I think, like Councillor Whip says, we need more of those wetland schemes up and down the country. I think the biggest problem has been with the water companies and the shareholders, for that matter, because they're making billions of pounds in profits but not investing in infrastructure. And they've been doing this for many, since it was privatised. And even last week, I think there was a report that said the general public utility companies and other public companies where £200 billion of public money has gone into, but no return as such. And I think there should be some strict kind of penalties or accountability for the shareholders, because they're the ones who are actually making the money, the profits, but not investing in the infrastructure. And they're happy to pay the fines on a regular basis because it's cheaper, but not to actually act upon the things that actually need doing.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In fact, I'm just going to reiterate what colleague just said then, that water companies were privatised, there was supposed to be competition. There is no competition. We live here, we have no choice of who we have for our water. And it's been well documented that these various water companies have squandered millions of pounds, sold assets, but not actually invested, or very little investments. Not just here, but around the UK. And I noted this year, that United Utilities had turned around and says, "Dear customer, we're really sorry, but we're going to have to put your bills up by 27%. Only a week earlier, it was very quietly announced that they were giving 25% of their income for that year was going out for shareholders. So we, as the customer, are paying the shareholders their bonuses. But the other side to that is, if a business goes into the stock market and says with flotation, there's a risk. They may make money, they may lose money. But with the water companies at the moment, there is no risk. They will permanently be making money. They will never have that, we'll go back to the shareholders, you need to invest. I know London was a bit of a strange one recently, but it always seems to be a profit for them. And as a customer, we are the ones who are suffering. It's Barlick with the flooding. It's not the only case, and it is something that needs to be looked into and I agree to be addressed. Thank you.
Councillor Land?
Just as an added point of information, I have a friend who works for Ampere Water who's been repeatedly hit with fines in recent times, and their reaction is to cut their employees' wages, not to cut bonuses and executive pay, but to reduce what they're paying workers, which I think is disgusting for these water companies, on top of the rises to customers.
Councillor Newman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking back at the situation that you're talking about, I think we'll find that most of the water companies are owned by foreign companies. The companies abroad, I think they'll have a fair job in trying to persuade these people that own the actual companies to change their policy. It's the money that they're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. There are proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. The next portion is transcribed. Councillor Lola Whip.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure everyone in this room is aware of how close to my heart this motion is. The Supreme Court decision, for those not aware, decided that the definition of sex in the 2010 Equality Act is biological sex, which they claimed in their decision would clarify things and settle the debate. Mr. Mayor, that has not happened, and that cannot happen, for the simple reason that biological sex doesn't exist. If you ask a competent biologist what is biological sex, they will tell you there isn't one. Across all species, the definition of biological sex just can't be made. There are so many people who live their entire lives with intersex conditions. Women with, no working womb, men with ovaries, and men who are also born who have conditions where the bodies do not react to testosterone, and so they don't go through any male puberty. There is only secondary sex characteristics, and that gets to the crux of the issue with the EHRC's interim guidance, Mr. Mayor. The interim guidance is, it goes through many aspects, but the big one that this motion really wants to push home is access to gendered toilets, Mr. Mayor. What the EHRC is proposing is that toilets be policed based on how people look. It is segregation, Mr. Mayor. And I think we've all grown up in this country with the privilege of not having to worry if the way you look impacts whether someone will allow you into a toilet or not. It does not take anyone much difficulty to look back at American history with segregation there, coloured toilets, and see how wrong it was, and be glad that we live in a world where that doesn't happen. But unfortunately, we have several groups, well funded, largely by American far-right extremists, in particular J.K. Rowling as well, who are pushing this idea that women who happen to be trans should not be allowed into those spaces. And we are seeing, even without the interim guidance being accepted by government, we are seeing companies who are already enacting that interim guidance, already causing anxiety and difficulty in people's lives, where before there was none. They advocate that there's a boogeyman of some man who decides to dress up as a woman, go into a ladies' toilet and harass them. And I don't think there's any examples of that ever happening. I don't think that there will be. Because someone who has that mindset to harass women doesn't need to do that. They do it anyway. We see it so often that women and minorities are harassed, are victimised by hateful men, and they don't need to put on a skirt to do that, Mr. Mayor. They don't. So I think that Mr. Mayor, I want to talk about my friend Kiki for a moment. Kiki is someone who I met in Leeds. She's been a trans woman for a very long time. She transitioned quite early in her life. And when the decision of the Supreme Court was made, she had already been facing a lifelong difficult situation of the NHS refusing her health care, Mr. Mayor. She has letters that she got from information requests where doctors have explicitly stated to ignore any health care requests. which is, I think, a breach of her human rights. But with that in mind, when the Supreme Court ruling came out, she felt that the country was out to get her, and I don't blame her. And she left this country within 1 week to Barcelona, Spain, and she does not want to come back. She would rather die in Spain than come back to the UK. And that is the kind of anxiety and worry that this is causing. So I would really urge everyone to support this motion tonight. I did have an amendment, but I've run out of time, so I'm going to use it.
Councillor Land, you want to second that?
Okay, I'd like to second this motion and I'd like to move a friendly amendment to lobby both of Pendle's MPs to call on the government to present the
Present the interim guidance to Parliament for scrutiny.
to present the interim guidance to the Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you. I'd like to second it.
Any more speakers? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Council tax exemption for the terminally ill. Councillor Justice Wall.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor. Hopefully this will be uncontroversial. Hopefully will be passed unanimously. Mr. Mayor, I think we all get involved in politics to make a difference to people's lives. And I think this is something which I think we can make perhaps a small difference to people in this predicament. Because the cost of living crisis, which we are all living through, we've seen constituents living through and experiencing, means that energy prices are high, fuel prices are high, and why that's relevant here for the terminally ill, Chair, is that mostly terminally ill people, obviously, if they're normally bedbound, they're going to be at home more than the rest of us because of their condition. That obviously increases the price of energy, the price of heating, the price of food and everything else. We can't pay their bills. What we can do, what is in the council's control, is a small part in providing an exemption to the terminally ill for at least the last 12 months of their lives. And as I say, it might be a small level of assistance, but for some people, and I've read about some people, maybe not everyone from Pendle, that are experiencing financial difficulties, because normally what happens is people with a terminal illness have probably not worked for many years, and towards the end of their life, the last thing they want to worry about is bills, council tax, and that's where we step in, Mr. Mayor. Because for people in this very precarious position, this might actually be a huge burden which they don't have to worry about, or their families don't have to worry about. Because if you look at my motion, Mr. Mayor, it also includes families, not just the terminally ill, but the person might be in a household where the family might be incurring the cost, because of course it also affects families. Many people have to stop working to look after their husband, their son, their parent, whoever that might be. So actually affects not just one person, the earning household person, it might affect the entire family, and this is where I think this particular initiative will make a big difference. So I was contacted by a constituent who highlighted that this is a scheme which has been adopted by Manchester City Council, and some councillors may have seen that in the news. And that is a very good initiative, and that was an initiative which was led by or promoted by a charity which I hadn't come across until very recently, I must confess, which is the Marie Curie charity, which is the end-of-life charity group, Mr. Mayor. And they have been calling on councils across the country, and I think more and more councils are picking up on this, because if Manchester City Council can do it, then I can't see why any other council can't adopt the position that they have. I accept, and I'm grateful to Mr. Conway when I asked him about the motion, how it can be presented, is that we can't obviously implement the policy today, and I think the leader approached me just before the meeting and said, because we're in a tiered council division, council area, that we obviously pay council tax to both Pendle and Lancashire Council, the PCC and the rest of it. So that needs to be worked out. But if you look at the motion, Mr. Mayor, what it suggests is that at the bottom of page 7, that the executive develop and present proposals to implement a council tax exemption scheme. And that's something that we need to go back and ask our officers to look at, ask the executive to look at, and hopefully implement a policy. And it may be slightly more convoluted than what Manchester have, because Manchester only are unitary, like Blackburn are, and they can implement that policy. But I think this is something which definitely needs looking into, and if we can get government support, then that obviously is better, Mr. Mayor, but I think it needs to start from the council, and I urge all members to support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second the motion. You're happy to second the motion? I think, like Councillor Iqbal says, I think the fine wording, the policy, we need to, really work out and maybe even see Manchester's policy, how they worded it and how it is implemented. Because, things like end of life care, also palliative care, we need to be considering all those within this policy. And sometimes, even the prognosis could be like 12 months, but, people sometimes live longer, so we just got to find, get it right.
Yeah. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak to the motion, but I want to move a friendly amendment, and that is that we add a final point at the end, D, that major preceptors be consulted on the proposal, and that boxes off the issue that Councillor Iqbal referred to in terms of, we can't just do this as Pendle Council. It does require the County Council and the other preceptors to agree to it. Speaking, and hopefully that will be taken as a...
Yes.
Speaking to the motion, Mr. Mayor, my brother died from terminal cancer in a most awful way, in a great deal of pain, and whether or not having to pay council tax would have made any significant difference to Keith and his wife. I doubt, they weren't impoverished or anything like that. But I do know just how dreadful the situation was, with a pain that could not be overcome, and literally dying in agony, and to compound that with people who aren't well off and struggling to make ends meet. I cannot comprehend how people survive in those circumstances. So I commend Councillor Iqbal Yasser for bringing this forward. I think that it is something that the whole council should support, and that we should lobby the people who take most of the council tax in order for them to agree to it. I'm aware that there was a similar motion at Burnley's council meeting last night. I'm assuming that it was passed there. So perhaps another example where there's a commonality of interest between ourselves and neighbours. Hopefully the whole of Lancashire would agree to do this, and we can lift this small burden. Well, it could be a massive burden to them, but in our terms, it's a small burden, and make people who are terminally ill just that little bit, well, I can't use the word comfortable, but make it a little bit easier. So, but fully support the motion with that tiny amendment.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's not an awful lot to add, really, because in the efforts of avoiding repetition, I'm fully in support of this. And actually, I've just been on holiday whilst I was away. I was actually reading things from Manchester City Council, and if I hadn't have seen this on my return in our papers, it would have been, I would have, probably spoken to you about moving it or supporting it, or moved it myself as a motion. I'm more than happy to support this. I'm minded of my friend Nick, who's got motor neuron disease, and he's currently suffering from that disease and he's living with it, but the degeneration of his life is difficult to watch and difficult to see. Now, he went from needing a stick 12 months ago to needing a mobility scooter 6 months ago to needing a stair lift 3 months ago, and it's that pace of change in his life that is the issue. And having something that would make his life less financially burdened, but also having something which takes that just that single thing less that he has to think about on a day-to-day basis away from him would mean the absolute world. So I'm fully supportive of this motion.
Councillor Lord.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support this, but thinking ahead, when people come to apply for the relief of council tax, that it's a smooth transition, that they're not burdened with a lot of red tape, because it's the last thing they need, and we know we have lots of red tape, but in this situation, it's got to be made as simple as possible. So that people aren't worrying about it and, further worry to what they've already got. So I would like to see that some assurance that will happen, that they're not put through more trauma than they need. Thank you.
Councillor Lola.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Lord has said exactly what I was just about to say. The bureaucratic burden, that the burden of proof with these kind of things can be so much worse than just having to pay sometimes. And I'm sure that the officers of this council are competent enough for that not to be the case. However, I have supported people who have been in this exact same situation with the Department for Work and Pensions, where they've had grievance leave for job seekers allowance, where you've got a family member who could die any minute, and they are getting turned around and saying, you need to send proof of it, you need to send it within 2 weeks or we'll sanction you, we'll take all of your money away from you, and that is so burdensome. And I think it's probably intentionally designed that way by the Conservative government of the day. But we cannot have a situation like that where the burden of proof is so high on the people applying for a scheme like this that it's just not worth the effort to try. We saw it during COVID as well. Pendle's trialled a scheme to support people who had COVID, and we had no applicants because the red tape was so much that they just didn't have the energy to go through that process. And so we really do need to bear that in mind, that any policy needs to be absolutely certain to not cause more harm than good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Iqbal, I'll bring Councillor Bell in and Armin, then you can wrap it up. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this completely. I'm just going to go on to the DWP, which was just mentioned, and they've currently got a scheme that if you are terminally ill with a short expected life term, that they will fast track you for help through PIP or through the attendance allowance. Maybe there could be a link then between the council and the DWP for when they've got something notified that's fast tracked, but we get notified at the same time. So let's say hopefully at least then we get notified at the same time. It's just yeah, I know. But if they're like, if we get notified, we can notify them as well. There is something there in place that should be, but I wholeheartedly agree with this motion.
Ahmed?
Yeah, very briefly, well done to Councillor Yasriqbal for bringing this motion before us. And it is one of their motions which can have a real impact on an individual's life. And just to have that thought, I think, by Yasriqbal is really good. In terms of the point Councillor Lord made, in terms of making it simple for people and the bureaucracy that they could potentially face, I think that'll now be the role of the executive, which I'm sure they're looking to carefully consider how it's going to actually work in practice. So I'm sure the executive will take that into consideration. Fully supported.
Councillor Iqbal?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just wrap this up very briefly, Chair, because I'm conscious of the time. I agree with Councillor Lord's point about the red tape that we need to avoid, and looking at the Manchester scheme, and I think that's why I mentioned that we need to commend Manchester Council becoming the first authority to do that. Maybe we can speak to them on how they implement that policy. Because one of the things when I looked at their policy was that they require a medical practitioner to sign a form, I think they call it the SR1 form, we might call it something different, to confirm that the person, the patient, has 12 months or less to live. And that's simply a form that gets submitted and then the scheme gets implemented. So I think that's something that we can look at. I'd certainly be in favour of something like that, where at the moment I'm sure the councils have helped constituents with council tax issues, deductions. And it's a very convoluted process. You've got to firstly go online, you've got to attach documents. Many elderly people will not be able to access the internet, attach documents. I'm often having to come to the council handing documents, which is a bit of a chore these days because officers sometimes don't accept them documents, so you have to scan them on. So that's the one thing. The other point was about Councillor Whip and him mentioning about his brother unfortunately having this illness. And he makes a valid point that it might not make a significant difference to everybody, but we've talked about council tax in this chamber over the course of the years and how we are disproportionately paying more than, for example, London. I know the MP for Pendle has mentioned something about that perhaps that's a different point. But if we look at the council tax, Chair, Mr Mayor, some people are paying up more than £300, and for even for people who are who were possibly on a good living, a good earning, a good income, £300 all of a sudden becomes a lot of money because there's nothing coming in. And even if it's at £180, still a significant amount of money to look at when you've got nothing coming in or the family's got nothing coming in. And I was actually contacted by the Marie Curie charity and just to thank me for supporting this motion, but they've sent me some interesting statistics which I should have mentioned in my first speech. And it says this: a very large proportion, around 37% of working age people and around 20% of pension age people are dying in poverty in Pendle. This means that 23%, so almost 1 in 4 people in Pendle, are spending their final year of life in poverty. So actually, if that statistic is accurate, and there's no reason to believe that's not accurate, we've seen it ourselves, then actually this will mean a significant financial cushion for people that are experiencing this towards the end of their life. But I totally agree with everything that's been said, and I'm grateful for the support from all members. And I, just for the record, accept Councillor Whip's amendment. Thank you.
We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please be respond to the resolution of the Mayor of Pendle, Councillor Mohammed Cameron.